Over the last 7.5 years, a lot has been said and written about Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm. To be sure, she has her supporters, but she also has a legion of critics, such as politics. In time, historians will have their say. But for now, the governor is quick to tell you that she's not done with her term or her agenda. So what does she think about her critics, and what are her plans for the pressing economic issues she has to grapple with every day? This morning on our program, we'll take you up north as I sit down one-on-one with the governor. It's the first time she's ever agreed to be interviewed inside the governor's residence on Mackinac Island. And whether you agree or disagree with what you're about to hear, it's Jennifer Granholm in her own words and opinions from a picturesque setting. It's Sunday, June the 13th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is a special edition of Spotlight on the News from the governor's residence on Mackinac Island. Governor, thanks for letting us sit down with you, the first one-on-one inside the Mackinac residence. What a beautiful place. I would think one could do some of their best thinking in this environment.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if I hope you can have your camera do a pan of the Straits of Mackinac off of the porch here. But truly, this residence here is, I think, a huge gift to any governor. Because you come away from being up here and looking at the blue of the Straits of Mackinac and, the green of the islands over here.
What a picturesque setting.
You can't help but be an optimist coming out of this. So it's a really beautiful place.
I would imagine among some of your other gubernatorial colleagues around the country, they'd want to trade with you in a heartbeat or something like this.
It's interesting. Most governors have a mansion that they live in regularly with pillars and all of that. And you've seen the governor's residence in Lansing is fairly modest. It's a ranch house. It's not a big deal. It was donated to the state. But this place up here on Mackinac is very, very special indeed. And in fact, one of the people that came to the Mackinac conference was Kathleen Sebelius, former governor of Kansas. They have a beautiful governor's mansion in Kansas, but they don't have anything like this. In fact, she is a summer resident of Michigan, or at least she has a cottage up here in northern Michigan on the Leelanau Peninsula.
We like anybody who's paying taxes.
Absolutely, and we love to spread the good news about what we've got to offer because it is a magical place.
Governor, this is not an exit interview. You still have a good 6 months left on your term. What is it you want to accomplish during that period of time?
I mean, Chuck, I laid out a series of 29 different reforms at the beginning of this year that I wanted to get done. And, of course, it always takes a partnership in the legislature. And some of the things that we need to get done are very controversial. For example, we recently passed this reform related to public school employees and their retirement. It's a difficult reform, but it's part of the message that we've got to send that government cannot afford the types of benefits that we used to offer. And that means governments across the board, not just state government, but local units of government as well. It's a tough message. It's a tough message for a Democrat to give because a lot of those who count on those benefits are folks represented by unions who traditionally support Democrats. But the message has to be from a big government perspective that it's not going to be the same anymore. So all these reforms that I've put on the table, which are hard, I want to continue to try to push them. And if we don't get them, I hope that people will vote for a constitutional convention in November because we need to change the structure of government. Frankly, we need to change our tax structure so that we can have a 21st century tax structure and not one that was constructed in the last century. There's a whole lot that we still have to do to continually improve as we know that our economy is going through a structural change as well.
We did a poll recently, and here are the numbers. Your unfavorability numbers are at 59%, and your job performance numbers are at 71% negative. How much responsibility do you bear for those numbers?
Well, the numbers are the way they are because the economy is rough and because we have the highest unemployment rate in the nation and because people don't want to hear why things are not moving quickly. They want it fixed. They want it done. And all these people who are running for office will tell the people why they're going to be able to fix it. But I'm telling you that whoever is elected in November is going to be facing the same set of problems. And the set of problems that Michigan has, and for the past decade, for 10 years, we've been in a phase of net job loss. Why? It's not because of taxes, it's not because of regulation, it's not because of labor unions. What it's because of is globalization, that the auto industry and our manufacturing base, and we have had 7 times more manufacturing jobs than all of the other states. Those kind of jobs in this new economy are moving to places like Mexico and China and India. So the question for a state like Michigan is, are we just going to wait for this rebound, or are we going to strategically and aggressively add new sectors to this economy? So we didn't get in this overnight. We're not going to be out of it overnight. And I'm telling you, whoever is in the chair of governor is not going to come with a magic wand. And whoever elects them has to understand that they cannot turn away from the strategy of diversifying our economy or educating our citizens. Would I have loved for this to have gone much faster? You bet. What could we have done? I don't have a magic wand either. These are the right steps to diversify and educate, but these are long-term strategies. And I knew from fairly early on, Chuck, that as governor, that we were not going to be able to flip a switch and have Michigan all of a sudden have a diverse economy, or all of a sudden have double the number of college graduates, which is our big, hairy, audacious goal. So these are tough times. I think people are reality testing well. They want to see quicker results, but these are long-term strategies.
So what you're suggesting is that Democrat or Republican, anybody who would have been governor during these tough economic times would have had numbers that are not popular.
Absolutely. No governor would have been able to prevent the bankruptcies of General Motors and Chrysler. No governor has the ability to negotiate trade agreements or to stop globalization. No governor coming in would have been able to change the mix in our economy overnight. I've made mistakes. I don't have, no illusions about that. And I completely understand the impatience of citizens who want to see quicker results. I completely get that. But I'm just telling you that whoever follows me is still going to have a difficult time. This is not an easy period for Michigan as we transition to a post-industrial economy. I even hate the words post-industrial because we want to have industry, obviously, but it's a different kind of economy with a different kind of mix.
The fact that you are Michigan's first female governor, how much did that play into you perhaps not getting some of the things through Lansing that you would like to have gotten through Lansing?
I honestly don't think that has much to do with it. Most of the people that I've deal with are my age or younger, and I think it's less of an issue in our generation. I'm usually the only woman in the room anyway. It was the case when I was Attorney General. It was the case when I was first woman corporation counsel. I've been the first in a lot of things. I just don't think that's the issue. The issue really is, Chuck, that we have a divided government and a divided legislature. John Engler didn't have that.
Well, let me, and I'm glad you mentioned John Engler. Newt Gingrich recently spoke before the Detroit Regional Chamber and painted a picture of Michigan being a very robust state when Governor Engler passed the baton on to you. Is that how you remember it?
I'm going to say I'm not interested in blaming anyone before.
I understand, but since he painted that picture before a whole lot of movers and shakers.
Everybody. When I came in 2003, we were in the middle of a national recession at that point. We had had net job loss in the previous 2 years, and I came in, and the economists thought that the cycle was about to go back up again, as though our auto industry was going to rebound. Everybody was believing that, but it never happened. So I came in a downturn, and we've stayed down because the auto industry, and that's the single biggest factor in our economy. The auto industry didn't rebound. You look at the loss of market share of the Detroit 3, and you look at the loss of employment in Michigan, and they parallel exactly. So our fortunes are so tied to one industry. And in the 90s, when Governor Engler was governor, yeah, we were selling SUVs at a great clip, and the Detroit 3 had a lot more market share, and therefore we were doing well, and we had a national economy that was doing well also. But Governor Engler had a House and a Senate that were both majority Republicans, and he had a good national economy, and he had a great auto industry. And, you know, it would have been a lot more fun, for sure, to be governor in the 90s. There's no doubt about it. Anybody coming in, John Engler, you know, I've cut more out of, people don't believe it because I'm a Democrat, but I've cut more out of government than John Engler ever did, more than any other state in the nation. Governor Christie of New Jersey, you know, this is his first year, and he's proposing stuff that we did long time ago. I mean, the cuts to and the reforms of the benefits. I've closed down 8 prisons because we've tried to do prison restructuring. There's 11,000 fewer state employees today than there was when in 2002, Governor Christie's proposing laying off 1,300. I'm just saying that we've gone through it a longer period of time. Michigan's perhaps more of a poster child of downsizing and restructuring government. Newt Gingrich obviously is a serious partisan, but the bottom line is Democrat or Republican.
So you
this
just
would have
clearly
been
do
tough.
not accept the premise that some have said, especially within the business community, that you failed to respond to an economic crisis with bold structural
What are those
reform.
bold structural reforms that you think that they're talking about?
They certainly wouldn't mind if it was a right-to-work state.
Right, and so do we have consensus on that in the legislature? Could that ever get through the legislature? Could they even get it on the ballot? There is no way they would get that on the ballot. I mean, my whole thing is I'm interested in getting stuff done. And, you know, you can put out ideas on the right and on the left, but if you're not going to have the ability to bring the votes along to get that done, then all you're doing is talking to yourself. So the bottom line is, what can you get done? We have cut more out of government than any state in the nation over the past decade. Any state in the nation. Our per capita tax burden and our corporate tax burden has dropped more than any state in the nation over the past decade. I'm just telling you that we have done a lot, but it's been more incremental than in one time. And truly, truly, I put our ability to manage through this crisis up against anyone in the country.
We'll be back with more questions for the governor right after this commercial break. Budget is supposed to be passed by September 30th.
Yeah.
You have said you want a budget by July 1st.
And the legislature said that too, by the way.
That's right.
They would like to see it.
And a lot of the talk that I've been hearing since I've been up on the island is there is no way in the world that they're going to have a budget by July 1st. Do you think that that is still realistic? And how are you all going to accomplish this if it has to, and it has to be a give and take process?
Well, first of all, I present my budget in February, and so there is a give and take. There's a whole period of time that they've been going back and forth. We just a couple of weeks ago had a revenue estimating
And all
conference.
this is in a highly political year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you got
very
candidates
tough year.
on both sides of the fence running.
Yeah, and you know, people who are, when they run, they often say things that they want, that the voters want to hear, and that are just not realistic. And you know, I'm going to eliminate all business taxes. Okay, you say that. How are you going to fund education and law enforcement and Medicaid? Bottom line is, we put a proposal on the table that had a balance of solutions. The legislature can get this done by July 1st. It is up to them to get it done. I can't push the vote buttons for them, but truly the solutions are all on the table. So you know, it's just a question of will. Can you guys get an agreement? I mean, I've put, they know that I'm willing to compromise, and our budget director is there meeting with their appropriations chief as we speak. But the question is, can they actually put it before them and muster the leadership to get the votes for it?
We're in the midst of a governor's race. Many have described it as the Republicans' year to lose. Do you agree with that? And if so, do you bear responsibility for that, since you have been the Democratic governor for 2 terms?
Well, first of all, I do think that there's a pendulum swing, perhaps, every time there is a period of time where you've had 2 terms, and we know that that happens in states. It certainly happened in Michigan after Governor Engler, who took over from a Democrat, who took over from a Republican. So in Michigan, we have a history of swinging back and forth on the governor's race. We are speaking in the month of June, and it is still too early to say. I do think that whoever are the nominees, that they have to speak to solving Michigan's problems by changing the mixture in our economy, by focusing on diversifying this economy and doubling the number of college graduates, because those are the 2 things that are going to change the mix in our economy going forward. Those are not partisan issues. Those are issues that every economist, all of the economic developers say Michigan must address: education and diversification.
How much will you stick and fight for something that you floated a long time ago, and that was reducing the sales tax, 6% to 5.5%, and extending it to more services?
And eliminating the business tax surcharge.
That's right.
So there's 3 pieces to that.
Our numbers show that that people aren't real wild about that. It's close, but the majority are saying that they may not want to see more services extended to this.
I don't think your poll tested where the funding would go, and I don't think your poll tested the elimination of the surcharge, and that's all important. The strategy is reduce the sales tax from 6% to 5.5%, spread it to services, take the funding for that and largely put it toward education so that you don't see these school districts with enormous cuts going forward as we try to double the number of college graduates, and eliminate the business tax surcharge. So all 4 of those really have to be a component of it. But that's the kind of balanced solution that I believe citizens would be willing to accept if they knew that it put Michigan on the right track going forward. That modernizes our tax structure. And the question is, are people in the legislature willing to step up and vote for that? The Business Leaders for Michigan, which is a collection of business leaders all over the state, CEOs, have suggested that very configuration. And that's what I put on the table. Now, will they vote for that before November, which is when their election is? Probably not. Is there a possibility we might be able to get them to be courageous in the post-November, before the 1st of January? We'll have to see. But I hope the business community and others are willing to step up to a grand bargain like that would continue to put Michigan on the right track.
The governor tells us what's the best part of this job right after this commercial break. Tomorrow, you're going to be involved in a project with Habitat for Humanity. Why, and what does that mean to your family?
Well, Habitat is doing something called these Michigan Family Builds, and this was really, Dan, my husband, his family, his mom was born in the city, and they come from a big Irish Catholic family, and we, as a symbolic and as a real way of going back to the city and helping to build a home, sort of claiming the city, which is a city that there was a bit of a diaspora from. Black families and white families have moved out. But what we want to do is exhort families, as part of family reunions, to come back through Habitat for Humanity and have your family reunion be building a home in this great city where you can take ownership of the rebirth of the city of Detroit. So we're going to have about 50 family members building this home, not too many blocks from where Dan's mom grew up and his aunts and uncles. And they're all coming back in from all sorts of places across the country, from both coasts, you name it. We're going to be working side by side with a family who's going to be residing in the home, a mother of 3 daughters, and she's going to be helping to build it as well. But it's a great way to have a family reunion and to do something important.
Governor, what has been the best part of this job?
Well, I can tell you, you know, I have to respond because we're sitting here on the straits of Mackinac, and I can tell you that this, looking out over this incredible state, is certainly one of the greatest parts of being governor. I've been able as well to mentor a young woman. She just graduated from high school this year. And in my small way, to be able to exhort her and others to be able to take care of that next generation, that's been a real joy. We've got over 15,000, almost 20,000 mentors now teamed up with kids who are born into circumstances over which they have no control, and who are benefiting from a loving adult presence in their life. Those are things that you might not read about, but they're really important to me personally.
Final question. Do you think, do you hope, do you even care if historians maybe judge you more fairly than maybe pundits currently are?
You know, I can't spend my waking hours worrying about what the pundits are saying. I know that what we're doing in diversifying and educating is the right thing. I know that the Pew Center on the States, which has evaluated every single state governor on how they manage, has ranked Michigan for the past 2 surveys one of the best managed states in the nation. I know that I am a good manager, and I am choosing with a tremendous team to focus on the basics, the right things for Michigan. In the end of the day, that's exactly how I'm going to judge myself. My family judging me is important, and they love me, and ultimately...
And that's been important.
Of course. And ultimately, I think Michigan people will see that we have planted these trees. I just have not been able to enjoy the shade of them. Some future governor will.
Governor, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and good luck in the time that you have remaining. And we'll hopefully do that exit interview.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure talking with you. Special thanks to the governor for letting us sit down with her one-on-one for the very first time inside her residence here on Mackinac Island. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more Newsmakers in the Spotlight. We hope you have a great week.
This Week is next on 7.